What is up guys, today we're going to take a look at the different builds for Saitama. Let's get started. Before we continue, just your daily reminder to hit that like button, subscribe, and smash that bell button to help out my channel. Any help is very much appreciated. Thank you. Saitama is one of the two new collab classes we get for Ragnarok's One Punch Man event, the other being Genos. Both collab classes follow the hero class system started with Thanatos, where we have a core hero skill which we unlock by getting second lines on the runes for the class, along with a limited number of skills designed to all fit into one skill bar. Let's take a look at his skills. As mentioned earlier, Saitama follows the hero class system where he has a core hero passive skill, leveled up through getting second lines on star and S runes, as well as other skills leveled up through skill points you gain when leveling up your job level. His core hero skill, Supreme Power, gives additional damage based on the strength of both you and your target, multiplied by physical attack times 10%. Additionally, for non-monster enemies, there is a knockback of 3 meters which increases by 1 meter for every 100 points of strength that the enemy has. The additional knockback ignores Endure and is affected by element, physique, and race. At level 4 of Supreme Power, all enemies knocked back will have their movement speed reduced by 80% for 3 seconds. Then at level 7, your damage to targets under concentration battle ignores dodge and block. Killing targets also restores all HP. For his damaging skills, we have his auto attack, successive attack, and enforcement of justice, all of which you should be using in your auto skill bar. Saitama's auto attacks are different because you can't go past 100% attack speed and you can't deal critical hits, but they deal 600% damage per hit. An additional effect of the skill is that every 10 points of your agi is converted into movement speed. He has other passive skills which bring other effects to this auto attack, which we will talk about later. Successive attack is One Punch Man's many punches. You lock onto an enemy and for 2 seconds, you deal 150% damage of your auto attacks every 0.2 seconds. The enemy locked onto can't move, hide, or use movement skills. Kind of like Sword Ninja's Flowing Shadow Heart, but not AoE. Also like Sword Ninja's Flowing Shadow Heart, every hit of this successive attack will reduce damage reduction of the enemy, the value of which is based on your rune. No powerful suppress rune, no minus damage reduction. Enforcement of Justice is Saitama's signature skill and the reason why he is called One Punch Man. This skill deals damage based on your attack, multiplied by the sum of 5000% plus your strength divided by 5, and repels the enemy. 20% of the damage is spread over 3x8 range behind the target, and all targets hit spin for 1 second. This skill ignores flee and defense. If you have the warm-up star rune, you also get a 10 to 80% chance of removing all the buffs on the target before the attack. Due to its animation, Enforcement of Justice locks you in place even after you hit the target, so I recommend cancelling the animation once the damage registers, just like what I'm doing here. Moving on to his passive skills, we have Agility of Hero, Heart of Hero, Intuition of Hero, and Terminating Punch. Agility of Hero gives increased attack and final damage to Enforcement of Justice based on your movement speed, so remember to ride your mount before casting Enforcement of Justice for extra damage. Heart of Hero increases Darkness and Fear resistance by 100%, and also reduces CC effect duration by 20, and reduces damage from MVP and mini monsters by 50%, making Saitama pretty sturdy. Intuition of Hero prevents any incoming damage that is less than the values of your strength and vit combined, multiplied by 100. This becomes 5 times as effective if you buff yourself using Fast Move. Assuming you have 200 strength and 200 vit, which is very easy to get nowadays, especially with Saitama's buffs, under Fast Move you already block any damage less than 200k. In some situations you can even set up Saitama as a tank because of this passive skill. Then lastly, Terminating Punch adds a stack of 8% to trigger Enforcement of Justice if you fail to kill the enemy and trigger another auto attack within 5 seconds. This stacks until you trigger Enforcement of Justice. This passive also increases your damage reduction by 50%, which lasts for 3 seconds every time you trigger an auto attack or successive attack. Unfortunately, this doesn't work with the Baphomet card. Moving on to his utility or buff skills, we have Workout, Jump, Fast Move, and Concentration Battle. Workout is a buff skill which you can use multiple times to stack the buff up to 3 times. Each stack gives you 50 strength and vit, and also increases damage and M damage reduction by 20% for a total of 150 strength, 150 vit, and 60% damage and M damage reduction. This buff resets to 1 layer after you attack. The buff lasts for 120 seconds. If you have the Exercise Secrets rune, you also gain 1 to 20 AG per stack. Jump is Saitama's movement skill where you can jump away to a maximum of 9 meters in an instant. Having the Undefeated Position rune also makes you immune to damage for 0.5 to 2 seconds, just like an improved version of Ninja's Shadow Leap. Fast Move is a buff skill where you increase movement speed by 100% and damage by 50% for 10 seconds. This buff cannot be cleared. Having the Limit Break rune increases this duration by 1 to 6 seconds. And finally, Concentration Battle is a targeted skill where you challenge an enemy to a duel for 8 seconds. Only damage coming from either party is valid. Duel ends once you reach 8 seconds, you go over 15 meters of distance, or if you defeat the opponent. Defeating the opponent also reduces the cooldown by 5 seconds. If you have the Power Emergence Star rune, if you defeat your opponent during Concentration Battle, you get 10 to 50 of their strength temporarily, which lasts for 30 seconds. Now let's move to his stats. From his skills alone, we can determine that his most important stats are Strength, Agi, and Vit. Strength for increasing damage of his skills as well as for attack, Agi for increasing movement speed, which also increases his damage, and Vit for increasing the amount of damage you can get through Intuition of Hero. Luck, as always, is a variable stat you can invest into if you have a Mastering Star card, but aside from that, because Saitama can't crit, it's not worth investing into. I would suggest getting max strength into a multiple of 5, max Agi into a multiple of 10, and place the rest on Vit. For Oracle Mirror, this depends on your preference. I use Silence and Stun Resist on my defensive extract because I tend to use Mark card in PvP. For offensive extracts, I use Claw for the attack, but Combustible Knife and Bilge's Arm are also great options. For his Aesir runes, here are the following attributes you can get. I don't have all of his runes unlocked yet, but here is my current setup. You can mix and match the attribute runes you use depending on how your values look. Let's move on to his builds. Saitama's performance in PvE is not as efficient as the other top tier classes, due to the fact that some MVPs and instances have a damage cap. These instances being Lil, CML, Void MVPs, Apocalypse MVPs, and Minis. Meaning, dealing damage over a certain amount doesn't matter because that damage isn't registered anymore. So if you deal 1 billion damage on an enemy that has a damage cap of 500,000, you only deal 500,000. This is why AARMs or Genos classes are popular for these instances because of how fast they attack. Regardless, we're talking about Saitama, so let's find a way to optimize this damage. This is the current setup that I use. As always, priority for PvE is MVP damage. But if you don't have the gacha for it, skill damage, PDI, and pen should work. Since all of his skills can be converted to other elements, gacha like this headgear also work because it increases elemental damage. Best choices are the ones with both damage to MVP and movement speed, such as this tail gacha. For the weapon, for PvE, Titan should give the most damage, but if you have enough damage, his exclusive weapon might be better for the extra utility brought by the movement speed increase. For ancient equips, I use Dragonbone for PDI, Voodoo for the pen, Leader's Pauldron for the skill damage, Loons for the pen, Ugin for the strength and PDI, and Void for the strength and ignore def. If you don't need any more ignore defense, you can use 2 Ugins for the strength bonus. For ancient equips, I would suggest you just use the one with the highest random attribute, provided you do a damage test. These choices will differ depending on how high your attributes are. Always aim to balance them out and not invest on only one attribute. For bosses that have a damage cap, we will be relying more heavily on successive attack. Enforcement of Justice automatically ignores defense, but successive attack does not. So in these cases, we will need to build ignore defense as well to ensure that our successive attack hits hard. Morale enchants are good regardless because they give additional strength. For PvP, I would say Saitama will shine more in small scale PvP. You can still perform well in war, but because of the cooldown of the skills and the fact that it's geared towards single target, performance might pale versus other AoE skillers. I use these equips for small scale PvP as a DPS. I mostly use the same left side gears because for PvP, Enforcement of Justice is the star of the show, which means we automatically ignore defense, so there is not much of a need to build ignore defense unless you plan on using successive attack primarily. Enforcement of Justice also ignores flee, so we don't need to build as much hit as the other classes. For the right side, I built Saitama as a glass cannon, focusing on final damage, because I'm aiming to defeat them with one punch, true to the name. That is why I use gears with final damage modifiers. For the weapon cards, you can use 2 Hydra Star cards instead of an LOD card, but because of the numerous people who use status effects in PvP, I leech off their statuses and get the 20% damage from the LOD card. You can always switch to a tankier build if you feel that your damage is enough to one-hit the people in PvP. Building for war, I would replace probably almost all of the gears in the right side with the rental gears from the vending machine, focusing on survivability both for scouting reasons and for us to survive till our cooldown ends. Overall, I think Saitama is a decent character for both PvE and PvP. For PvP, I feel like his cooldowns hurt a lot of his potential, so I hope we get shorter cooldowns or maybe bigger splash damage on his Enforcement of Justice. As for PvE, the meta nowadays really is suited for classes with continuous damage, so the best situations for burst damagers such as Saitama are the non-apocalypse MVPs, which he can handle pretty well. That's it for this video. I hope you learned something. Leave your questions below and I'll see you next time. Bye!